Jonathan, we now know what the Greek deal looks like. It's pretty much total capitulation on the Greek side. I think it's a bad deal, certainly economically speaking. It has three parts: austerity, reforms, and a privatization fund. I think that the austerity will probably depress the Greek economy further and make the debt less sustainable rather than more. The reforms, I think, are a mixed bag. Some will work, some won't, but even those that work will take a long time to work. The privatization fund, it might do something good, but it will never reach the 50 billion that have been mooted. So I think this was a bad deal, and probably one that both the creditor side and Greece should have made an effort to find a better alternative to. But what do you think? Were there alternatives?
For me, this deal is sort of the final nail in the coffin of this whole process. And it's really convinced me that there isn't probably a deal within reach that can deliver what is right, I suppose, for the welfare of the Greek people while satisfying the political requirements of the Eurozone. I think it's clear that what really Greece needs is not more debt, but growth. And I think the experience of the last 5 years shows pretty conclusively that within these sort of structures, the sort of structure that this rescue, this bailout will set up, I think the chances of there being real and meaningful growth are remote. And as I say, I think the Eurozone simply precludes a deal which is more pro-growth being struck. So I've come to the conclusion that although there are no good outcomes, no easy outcomes, certainly for the Greek people in all of this, or indeed for anybody, any participant, I think the better thing for the Greeks now would be to contemplate exit, even though we've just seen the parliament in Greece pass the legislation that's been pushed on them by the government, although I would note that while he did so, the Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, made it very clear that he was doing this under duress, and he didn't believe in the measures that he was passing.
So it doesn't sound sustainable politically, either on the Greek side or on the creditor's side, I suppose. No. Now, I agree with that. I disagree that that means exit. Grexit is probably the best solution. We could go back and say all of this shows is it was wrong to refinance the Greek debt to begin with. They should have been allowed to default then. I think probably it would be better now for Greece to default within the Eurozone. I think that's possible. I think it's a mistake to think that if you default, you have to leave. That's a conclusion that doesn't follow from the structure of the Eurozone, but from some particular choices that are being made. And I blame the ECB, as you know, because it's the central bank that says, unless you agree to a deal that I think, and probably you think, is a bad deal, then we will kill your banking system, hold back liquidity at least. That makes the option of defaulter within the Eurozone so unpalatable to the Greeks that Grexit is the only alternative. But that was never necessary, right? The Eurozone is supposed to separate the sovereigns from the banking systems.
I suppose my focus is less on the institutional structures within the Eurozone and more to do with what is probably the better outcome for the Greek people. And my view is they've just literally got to find a way to get growth. And they cannot take on any more debt finance. Therefore, they must create the conditions in which they can encourage investment and attract equity into Greece. And it seems to me that a devaluation, if Greece was not in the euro, we would be, and was in some fixed currency peg, we would be urging the Greeks immediately to devalue. It's almost the first step they would take. The reason we don't is precisely because of these the institutional complexity of the Eurozone and the political compromises that are baked into it, which makes everyone nervous that if you pull one card out, the whole thing will collapse in a heap. But I think that in this particular situation, which we now have in Greece, which is a fantastic degree of political instability, you've got to start thinking about people's welfare first.
We disagree. I'm somewhat more hopeful than you are at what's possible within the Eurozone. I'm much more pessimistic than you on the benefit that could be had from leaving, for Greece, from leaving the Eurozone and devaluing. In one sense, they have already devalued. Wages and prices have fallen by 20–30%. Exports haven't picked up at all. So I don't think devaluation will buy them anything. What leaving maybe would buy them is that they could flush the system with liquidity. That's what's lacking now. Brings me back to the ECB. But I think where we can agree is that we're both rather pessimistic and we'd rather hope that we're both wrong.
Let me give you one last thought, if I may, on the incentives. I think the incentive structure of the bailout processes we've been going through is entirely negative, because what it does is it encourages the Greeks. It offers the Greek people or the Greek government a kind of goodie which they shouldn't have, which is more debt, which they cannot really afford and service, in return for the implementation of reforms which they do not author and they do not support. We know this from listening to Mr. Tsipras today. What this does is it encourages an entirely negative cycle where they take the money because they need it, but they have no incentive or desire to implement the reforms, which is perhaps the worst and most perverse possible outcome you can possibly imagine politically. What I think they need to do is to substitute, instead of this, they need to own these reforms. And the way they own these reforms is you substitute for this managed process, which is so harmful, in my view, to European politics, a situation where it gets to a certain extent impersonalised. Leaving the euro is not an easy outcome for Greece. It will substitute for the pressure from the Eurogroup, the pressure from the market. It will still have to perform. But governments will own the programme and become accountable to their own constituents. And I think that's a massive improvement.
That's a civil disagreement. Jonathan, thanks very much.
Thank you.